Hey there, fifth graders. Today we're going to take a look at subtracting unlike fractions, which is just like adding unlike fractions. The first thing we need to make sure is that we are creating common denominators. So just like adding our fractions, we need to create common denominators so that we're dealing with the same size pieces when we're combining them and taking them away. And remember, to create your common denominators, you need to identify a common multiple between the two denominators. Now again, when you hear the word multiple, think multiply. Think multiply. So if I ask you what are the multiples of, let's say, 3, your multiples of 3 would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, so on and so forth. And in general, it is definitely the most useful to identify the least common denominator, which is the least common multiple between the two denominators that you're dealing with. So here's the key. Once you've created your common denominators, so once you've used your equivalent fraction skills that you already have, you're going to subtract the numerators and keep the denominators the same, just like you did with adding. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example. Let's model an example. So I'm going to have 1/2. Let's go ahead and shade that in. So I've got half. And from that, I am going to take away 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and take away that quarter, and I am left with just 1/4 shaded in. So this answer, when we model this, we get 1/4. Now let's take a look mathematically, because we're not going to want to draw pictures all the time. Let's take a look mathematically at how we can solve this. And we're going to go ahead and use our fraction flag again to help organize our work. So we've got 1/2 is the first number, so that needs to go on top. And from that, we will subtract 1/4. Now I need I need common denominators first. So let's think about the multiples of 2. My multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, so on and so forth. My multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, so on and so forth. The least one in common would be that 4. So I'm going to go ahead and change these into quarters. And the way I would do that with my halves is I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2. And that gets me 2/4, which is definitely equivalent to half. And I'm going to go ahead, just for organization purposes, I'll go ahead and multiply 1/4 by 1 over 1, and we get 1/4. And so now we're going to subtract. I'm going to look solely at the numerators. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 minus 1, which is 1, and I keep my denominator the same. And so what we've just done is we have just created our fraction flag. We worked our way out, and then we worked our way down. And if we box it all in, it kind of looks like a flag, as if somebody were marching forward and the flag was flying behind them. So that's what we're going to call our fraction flag. So what happens if we just subtract straight across? Because I can't tell you how many students I've seen do this, and this is a cow move. This is a cow move. This is a cow mistake. Utterly wrong. Let's analyze the last example and see what would happen. So if we could, if we could subtract straight across, we would get 0 over -2. And you boys and girls aren't even ready to start fully understanding our integers, but if you have $2 and you spend $4, you're now $2 in debt. So we would get 0 over -2. Now remember, fraction bars are division symbols. So that literally means 0 divided by -2. And remember, 0 divided by anything is 0. So if the answer were going to be 0, the way that we've just done this incorrectly, the only way with subtraction that we could get a difference with subtraction is so the only way we could get 0 as our answer is if we subtracted 1/2 from 1/2. That was not our problem. So it cannot be the answer, so therefore it's unreasonable. That is a cow answer. So again, our first step is we have to create common denominators. Let's take a look at our next example. We have 3/4 minus 2/3. The first number has got to go on top because order matters with subtraction. Okay, I know I'm going to work my way over to create my fraction flag. thirds and quarters, our least common denominator would be twelfths. Okay, I'm going to multiply that by 4 over 4, that by 3 over 3, and I get 9 twelfths minus 8 twelfths. We're going to go ahead and subtract our numerators. 9 minus 8 is 1. My denominator stays the same, 1/12. I've got my fraction flag. I've got my work all nice and neat. Oops, sorry, 1/12. Let's take a look at the next example. 2/3 minus 2/5. We need to create common denominators. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the structure for my fraction flag here. Okay. Thirds and fifths, 3 and 5, our least common multiple is 15. And again, if you need to list out those multiples, go ahead. So we've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and then our multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, so that's how we can see, oh, all right, our least common multiple is 15. So if you need to use this method, there's nothing wrong with that. Totally use it. But hopefully a lot of us are getting more comfortable with doing that mentally and just kind of working through our times tables in our heads to create our common denominators. So here we're multiplying by 5/5. Here we're multiplying by 3/3. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 3 is 6. We are subtracting this time. 10 minus 6 is 4, and my denominator stays the same. And again, I've got a nice fraction flag going on. My work is nice, neat, and organized. I work to the side, and then I work straight down. All right, one more example together, and then we'll take a look at what happens if we don't pick the least common denominator. So we've got 4/6 minus 1/8. Okay, 6 and 8, our least common, let's go ahead and list out 6's, 6, 12, 18, 24. Ooh, I'm going to stop there because I know that that is divisible by 8. So 24 is going to be my least common denominator. Can we wait like a few minutes? Okay, perfect. All right, sorry about that. So to turn sixths into 24ths, we are multiplying by 4/4, and that gives us 16 24ths. And here we're multiplying by 3/3, so we get 3 24ths. We're subtracting 16 minus 3 gives us 13 24ths. Again, I'm nice, neat, and organized, and I've got my nice fraction flag. Okay, let's take a look at an example where, and let's see what happens if we don't pick the least common denominator. So what if I don't have the least common? Again, just like with addition, have no fear. You're still going to get the right answer because any common denominator in the whole wide world will do. It'll work. The only thing is it's going to cause you one more step, and that last step is you're going to have to simplify your final answer, but that's A-okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at fourths and sixths. So in one example, we're going to do the LCD. We're going to find the least common denominator, and here we're just going to find a common denominator. And I'm going to do it by just multiplying my denominators together. And we call that kind of like a quick common denominator or an easy common denominator. You can just multiply the denominators together. So if we use our, let's look at this side first, actually. So if I'm turning 4 into 24, I'm multiplying by 6/6. And here I'm multiplying by 4 over 4, and we get 4 24ths and 6 24ths. I am subtracting, and I get 2 24ths. Now, this is not in simplest form, so this is where that extra step comes in, where you need to divide the top and bottom by 2, and you get 1/12. Okay? Beautiful. We got the right answer. But let's see if we had used our least common denominator, and let's list out our multiples of 4. We get 4, 8, 12, and I'm going to stop there because I know that's divisible by 6. So I'm going to use our twelfths, so I'm going to multiply this by 3 over 3. This would be by 2 over 2. 2 twelfths, 3 twelfths. 3 minus 2 gives you 1/12. We got there without having to simplify. So again, as you can see, we do get the same answer. This one requires one extra step if you do not pick the least common denominator. But that's okay, because you have the skills to do that. I'll do 2 more examples with you, and then I'm going to let you loose and try the next 2 on your own. And you can check the completed copy of my notes to check your answers. So we have 3/5 minus 1/6. Okay, I need to create my fraction flag here. 30ths is my least common denominator. So here I'm multiplying by 6 over 6. That gets me 18 30ths. 5 over 5, that gives me 5 30ths. 13 30ths. And my work is nice, neat, and organized, and that's my final answer, 13 30ths. And one more example together, 3/8 minus 1/3. Let's go ahead and set up for our fraction flag. Eighths and thirds. Well, if I think about my multiples of 3, I've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. 24 is divisible by 8 as well. Multiply it by 3 over 3. This guy by 8 over 8. 9 24ths minus 8 24ths. I'm just going to subtract those numerators, and I get 1 24th. And that's my final answer.